We are live.
All right. Hey, class. Good to metaphorically see you all. This is our group. We're going to be debating some qualitative versus quantitative research, and we are thrilled to do it. We'll start with some introductions. I'm Greg Pereira. I will be defending qualitative research, the only real kind of research. And I've been watching inaugural coverage for the last 24 hours. I've learned a lot from Trump about the art of debate, and I'm excited to get started.
All right, I'm Sean. I'm also going to be on the qualitative side of the debate. Also, 24 hours, deep into inaugural coverage, especially as a government teacher. So I have some huge news for you all today. Who's up next?
And I'm Brett, coming to you from, I'm in Langkawi in Malaysia right now. So I am not deep into election coverage, but I am assuming, based off of what Trump has told me, that the ladies on the non-qualitative side will need my assistance so ladies, do not fear. I will assist you. I have brought a quantitative article to help you if you need it. I don't mean any of that. I don't mean any of that.
Hi, everyone. Michelle, you want to go?
Michelle Glightly, and I am in Salt Lake. I've avoided all election coverage, and it's snowing right now, so it's very exciting over here.
And hi, everyone. I'm Nika. Michelle and I will be debating on the quantitative side with Brett's help.
All right, so I guess we'll get going with sharing our initial thoughts of qualitative and quantitative. And this is really weird, looking into my computer screen and seeing it myself on my phone. That's a better story for later on. Just know that there's a reason why there's two camera angles on me, not because I think I'm the best on earth. Just yeah. Anyway, to start on a qualitative side, the three guys on the qualitative side believe that it is a much, at least this is my opinion, that it is a much stronger way of research due to the personal impact and personal thoughts, how it drives the research topics and provides a humanistic feeling to the research and why something is the way it is. So the way I look at it with my own research, looking at flipped classroom models, and it's great. Statistics does wonders sometimes, but at the same time, I don't really know how the students feel about the instructional models when it's just, great, the numbers show, okay, achievement. But if the students are doing well, but they're telling me that they hate it, well, it's not really effective. So that's at least my introductory feeling about qualitative. Someone wants to jump out.
I'll follow up on that. Oh, Nika will follow up on that.
Go ahead, Greg.
Well, let's strengthen that qualitative argument then. I was reading Peshkin, 1993, and they make a very interesting and compelling point where they talk about how we benefit from stories of all people, but in particular, what qualitative research allows us to do is to hear individual stories, i.e. from at-risk students who by all means should not have succeeded, but did. You can drill down in that data more so to get really specific and interesting things. And what I think is most important is, sure, we get research, same as quantitative, but we have a better understanding and can ask follow-up questions as to how that affects the individual. And at the end of the day, we're studying people. So understanding a problem, a possible solution, and how it affects the person, both positively and negatively, is a huge asset and benefit to qualitative research.
Okay, thank you for that, Greg. I'll talk about quantitative, my very first introductory spiel on quantitative versus qualitative. And that is that quantitative can really give us a wider scope than qualitative. We can really look at population level approaches such as epidemiology and public health, looking at how the public, how populations are affected. And so this gives us a greater scope and can affect policy change. And so these are the things that that politicians are looking at, that people who fund public services are looking at when they fund programs. They're looking at the population, and they're looking at how that population can be affected. And you can only really do that through quantitative research.
Especially like you mentioned with education funding, statistics is what they want to see. They want to see the quantitative side of where are student test scores. They don't want to see students feel warm and fuzzy when they learn this material. So from like a funding side and a policy side, the quantitative is where what those, you know, policymakers, politicians want to see, because hard facts and hard data, kind of the hard sciences of social sciences, is really what is presented for most part.
I'm sorry, Michelle and Nico, let me jump in on that. I'm going to have to disagree with you here, mainly because the federal government has abused quantitative research to enact policies that specifically hurt students across the country, i.e. No Child Left Behind. Hey, if we just have standardized test scores that everyone is expected to hit, education system will do better. Wrong. Local control, qualitative research, understanding how it affects the individual student is clearly the superior route in this. And I know Brett's going to back me up on that.
Of course I'm going to back you up on that, Greg.
That's right.
But I mean, the real thing is here is, I mean, are we in this to teach kids for funding? Is that like everything that we're trying to do here? So we do quantitative research just so that, because it's easier to sell to government, to say this is these are some numbers, so not just some money. And as long as like we now this coming from Brett 2017, January 22nd. So it's a great article. You should check it out. No, I mean, like, we wouldn't want to, as long as we only believe that, like, oh, if we just give numbers to the government, then we're funding, and whether those numbers are reliable or not means nothing, then yeah, we would go with quantitative. But as long as if that's what we give them, then that's what they expect. But is what we want to do is we want to say, like, here's like reality, like contextual research that actually makes a difference, and here's real examples of that. I mean, I walked into a spa today and got myself a nice little massage, and they gave me a survey afterwards, and I just checked excellent on everything. And the questions, but just because I checked yes, like, quantitative research is the easiest thing in the whole world to just, I can just phone it home, and like, we just want to pretend like it's such science and it's such perfection, like, oh, here's some numbers, so therefore it's great. It's like whoever owns like the numbers therefore owns the conversation, and numbers are only a piece of the story, and they can be, and if anything, like, numbers can be more easily manipulated than anything else.
So words
without,
can't
like,
be manipulated?
What's that?
Are you saying that the words can't be manipulated in qualitative? So your example of your survey after, did they ask you for just comments? Did you provide those?
No, of course not.
Okay, so you didn't
Because-
contribute to the qualitative aspect of their assessment of your experience.
No, because I really would have had to, like, think about that, and I would have really had to, like, put some, like, real effort and thought into it. But with the quantitative, I could just phone it home easy. So it was just very simple for me to just check yes, 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 or excellent, 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 or agree, agree, agree. Whereas if I had to actually, like, write it, if I actually did decide to write in the comments, like, it would have been much more difficult for me to actually, I would have had to care, and like the very act of writing or speaking to somebody forces you to, it takes more effort to not necessarily lie, but to actually, like, care. So like when I say something to somebody, or if I write something down, then I actually might as well just say what I feel if I have to go through this process. So there has to be some validity to that process, to the process of writing, or to the process of speaking through something, rather than just checking boxes in surveys and those things. So, yeah.
But
No,
then
I have to. Go ahead.
But then how do you recommend getting this information out to the public? I mean, they're not going to, they want to see snapshots. The further out you go, the higher up in power you go, the less they want to see. They want to see snapshots. They're not going to read pages and pages of qualitative documentation. They just want to see snapshots. So how do you recommend getting this out to the public and to the people that fund us?
Well, I think that's also part of the problem, is that we're not giving enough time to really look at the issues. I mean, Greg brought up No Child Left Behind, but here's another one for you with Common Core. I mean, Common Core has been a horrible installation of education. Coming from a teacher, I used to teach 7th grade. Now I'm in high school. Common Core has obliterated the whole teacher to student relationship and trying to build out individualized learning, when that's actually one of the areas that it's supposed to be strong in. It's actually weakened the ability to have one-on-one conferencing and be able to differentiate learning between students. And part of that problem is the fact that it's, student test scores are down. We need to pump more money into specific areas to help bring up the their test scores. It has to be the test scores. But when in doubt, well, maybe they just don't test well. Maybe they achieve their learning in other methods. And something that I found to be interesting is, just as I've been doing my research for my dissertation, from Tawfik and Lilly, 2015, it's an article that looks specifically at research with flipped classrooms, and they use some quantitative methods to build into the qualitative methods. That they need a base of information about the students, maybe test scores wise, but what drives the research overall are the interviews, are the focus groups, are the case studies, to really kind of get a sense of the problem and how to focus on specifically fixing an issue or trying to find a solution. But the fact that, to think that we can just find statistics, find numbers, and say, okay, pinpoint the problem and say this is how we're going to fix it, is part of the overall issue within education.
But is that the objective of quantitative research? To find those pinpoints?
Well, explain your point a little bit more, because
is it that quantitative is building something to create a theory, or are we saying, hey, here's what our theory is, let's get some numbers behind it, right? So I don't think the purpose would necessarily be to pinpoint those things. Does that make sense? So instead of saying, here's what our data is showing from our quantitative research, okay, now you take that and run with it qualitatively to really dig in and find out what's actually happening. And from that, you find teacher relationship is super important. Okay, take that back to the quantitative side. What research can we do from that angle now that we know that this is now part of a theory? And then kind of back and forth, bouncing off of each other.
I think it depends on what type of a researcher you are. If you're someone that doesn't believe in the validity of a qualitative approach, then no, you wouldn't think that way. You're going to think that, why spend all this time interviewing people and we lost Brett. Why spend all the time interviewing people and doing focus groups when the proof is in the pudding in the statistics, which the statistics don't have, a brain, a heartbeat, be able to tell you how, what their experience is to the research, which is, I think, what makes qualitative research so powerful. The back and forth between the teacher and student, the teacher reflection after a flipped classroom environment or after a full class atmosphere has occurred, that gets lost without any type of qualitative approach.
I mean, I'll throw in this for you, Sean. So I'm coming. This is a Mills article from 1983. So it tells you about how long we've been going on with this. It brings up like 3 points as to yes, quantitative research, amazing for certain things. But when we're talking about things like education and social research, he brings up like 3 really good points as to like the problem with quantitative research, which is first, like social processes cannot be explained with just data and facts. So we cannot understand things in only one way. through only numbers. These are social interactions, and that we can't base like our understanding of like social realities and social relationships without understanding like the deeper context within which they happened. So, you know, if I don't understand like where the data was taken, why it was taken at that time, why I only check the boxes for excellent at the spot at that given time, like, those things cannot be explained with numbers, and numbers can never allow somebody to get deeper into what we're actually talking about here. Quantitative research just in the end just fails on basically every level to explain or account for any type of social interaction in any deep and meaningful way. It just categorizes it as a number or as a piece of information, and it fails to understand it in the larger historical perspective and within which it happens. So those are some of the points brought up by Mills when he brings up the QQD debate.
But quantitative does say that we want to do breadth, we don't want to do depth. That's kind of what they say they want to do. So saying that that's what they're doing is like, yep, that's what we do.
I'd like to respond to that with a story, if I may. I've been thinking recently about doing a new research project, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to get 20 kids, I'm going to put them in a classroom, and I'm just going to beat them with bamboo sticks. So you get a question wrong, I'm going to whack you with bamboo. You're talking to somebody else in class, we're going to whack you with bamboo. You know, you're not reading all your stuff, we whack you with bamboo. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the data on it, and I'm going to come to the federal government and say, hey, guess what? I found a way to get 100% success out of students. It's the best theory you've ever saw. I call it no child cane behind. You're going to love it. And I run it through. Okay, I got breadth, right? I got data, and I can prove some measure of success, but there's absolutely no taking into consideration how that affected the people involved. And that's the problem when you just do quantitative research. I can show numbers you want to see. I can show breadth of numbers, but if it negatively impacts or affects the individuals taking part in it, it serves no purpose. It does no good. There's a limited scope. And at the end of the day, we're all people.
I think that's an overgeneralization of quantitative versus qualitative, because you can ask, I guess, feeling questions, or if you want to use the word qualitative questions, in a quantitative way. Like you can ask students how they feel and get numbers from that, like a Likert scale. That's asking you, how did you feel about this? Liked it, hated it, right? So you can get feeling things and present them in a numerical way.
And I think it depends on the discipline too. So I read a public health article that talked about alcohol and epidemiology and the epidemiological approach to studying the effects of alcohol. So for example, if you're looking at problematic behavior in a neighborhood that is related to alcohol, so noise complaints, domestic violence complaints, anything that could be related to alcohol. And you look at also alcohol density. So where is alcohol bought and sold? If there's a high alcohol density and a high incidence of alcohol-related problems, then you could look at policy and see, well, maybe we should have lower alcohol density and create policies that don't allow a bar and a liquor store on every neighborhood, on every street in the neighborhood. And that lowers the risk of alcohol-related problems.
But Nika, can't that be similar to how drowning deaths go up with popsicle sales? I mean, that's the part you don't know. We see two numbers both rise, right? Neighborhood, alcoholism. But unless you have that qualitative piece of asking, is it because you have more accessibility to liquor that you drink more? Or, you know, isn't that a much clearer way to understand if there's a correlation or if there's actual reason for it or if the two are actually connected?
I mean, I guess you can make that point. But again, and you did make that point, but I don't know, when you're looking at health-related behavior and criminal behavior, I think it's a little bit different. I I don't know. I just think that policy cannot be influenced. That's my main point. I don't think that policy level change could be influenced with qualitative level data.
I'm with you. I mean, but I think like where we've gone is we've gone beyond like even policy right now. Like, and I agree with you. Like, if you're going to present some stuff to, God forbid, our new administration, right? You're going to come at them with numbers, and that's going to be the way it is. But like we've moved on to like the ontology, epistemology, like type discussion of like how do we actually know anything? Like, do we know stuff because of numbers, or do we know stuff because of feelings? Like, how do we, like, I don't remember which one it is. I guess it's what, ontology or something like that, which is like, how do we construct our human knowledge? And so like, how do we actually know anything? Do we know things because we sat here and we like debated this? Even one of us actually believes our side or versus the other, like, or we all know the outcome, like, and in the end, like the only way that we can actually construct, we're social beings, and the only way we construct knowledge is not through numbers, and like that's evolution or whatever it is. Like we're social beings, and we construct an understanding of our world and our reality through interactions with other people, not through interactions with numbers or with perceptions. So qualitative research allows us to constantly re-examine our situations and our contexts, whereas quantitative data puts us in a box and says, well, in this situation, these are the numbers, so therefore, like we're going to make some assumptions about what the situation is in other places because we have this hard fact. And in reality, like you can't really make those assumptions, and quantitative data pushes us in that direction to say, make assumptions about areas beyond where that data was even taking place. So that's my main fear with quantitative data is that push to extend beyond where the data was taking place in.
So you don't feel like qualitative research also has that limitation?
No, I really honestly, no, I don't think qualitative data, especially when we're talking about qualitative versus quantitative, I don't think that qualitative data necessarily pushes us to, it may push us to discuss what that may look like in other situations, but not necessarily to say this is what's going to happen in your situation, especially not to the degree that you see with quantitative. When we talk about like developing policies, we're talking about developing them on quantitative data, and policies inherently say what worked in one place worked in another place, or this is best practice in one place versus another place. Whereas qualitative data is pretty transparent in saying like, this is what occurred in this situation, and this is who was involved in that situation, and perhaps it may work in your situation. So there is an assumption that it may work. Is the assumption that it will work. A big difference in terms of the two arguments, or the two methods or methodologies or whatever they.
Brett, I have to say, I love that you brought that up, because that's 100% correct when it comes to qualitative. That, you know, quantitative is just, here you go, here are the numbers. This is what worked in for this specific study. It should work with your study or your area as well. But if we go back to education and policy again, if using qualitative, what works in my classroom may not work in a classroom in Arizona. And having experience in classrooms in Arizona and classrooms in New York, we do in New York won't work in Arizona, because you have a difference of, you have regional differences, you have demographical regions. So I have testing on my mind right now. That's next week. Regional differences, sorry, not regions. So I think that gathering the experiences from the students, from their experiences in whatever we're trying to do in the classroom, is what helps with moving forward and being able to identify reliability, and also if it's going to be able to function in, potentially in another classroom, maybe in, I don't know, Wisconsin or in Seattle. You know what I mean. Let's say Green Bay, Wisconsin, or Seattle, Washington. Every area is going to be different, and I think qualitative does a much better job of that, because then we kind of understand, well, what everyone's thoughts and feelings were towards a specific environment, versus, okay, well, the students, with this environment, they performed above, one standard deviation above where they should have, or something like that. And I'm trying to bring in your quantitative wording there with, standard deviation. So,
well, the quantitative research is looking for large numbers, right? So it can be generalizable. That's its strength. It can be generalized across different contexts because there's so many, cases or instances that they're collecting data from.
Well,
And I'll give, sorry, can I just keep going one more second?
Go.
So one of the articles that I found was talking about environmental things, and they have these environmental regimes that are talking about different policies, different, bans on certain things, requirements to do certain things. We give you money if you do this, but we take money away if you do that, right? So just kind of different approaches to how to improve the environment. And they have a ton of qualitative studies where they really looked in depth at what was going on. But that was really specific because it's different countries as well. So what's working, in Asia may not work in America and Europe and different things like that. So they had all of these case studies, but they couldn't do any generalization across to other ones. So that's when they took the quantitative approach, and they say they helped us move from statements of possibility to development statements of probability. This could possibly work with the qualitative, but when they added in the quantitative data, they could then say, yeah, this is probably going to happen. So just kind of a difference in what you can do with your data.
Yeah, quantitative data really gives you a sense of predictability. So if you implement a policy or a new program, you can really look at quantitative data to see if that has worked. And you can't do that with qualitative data.
But there's a risk in making assumptions on probability, because that's how a lot of different groups have been disenfranchised over the years. That's why we know that qualitative research has been integral in the women's rights movements, LGBT, for minority groups, because while you're a smaller subsect of the population, people are examining data and saying, oh, well, it'll affect you in the exact same way. But in reality, maybe it doesn't. And that's why, my friends, we are quilt makers in qualitative research. We don't cast a broad blanket. It's not a Walmart $14.99 blanket that looks exactly the same from one end to the other and is going to fall apart in the washing machine. It's a quilt, individual patchwork of other people's experiences and differences that are sewn together to tell us a broader story, yet it maintains the individuality of groups and respects that different problems affect people in different ways.
Bam.
Boom.
All right, hold on. I'll come in. Remember, I promised I'd come in on the other side. I'd come in on the other side.
To rescue us.
I found to rescue you, as we all know. Never. I'm just gonna shut up. It's getting out of control already. I found this article that was a metaphor between Ulysses versus Palamedes, which is apparently some Greek mythology character, and they compare Ulysses as the this is ridiculous, I know. Ulysses is he's the pro-qualitative person in this argument. Medes or whatever is the quantitative guy, and basically the whole point of this becomes like this idea that like qualitative ends up winning out, not because it's better, but just because it can convince people of its argument on words. So like if I'm a better debater than you, if I'm a better arguer than you, if I'm more convincing with my words, I therefore win out. And what quantitative does is it takes some of those, like the way that we may be able to manipulate other people around us. So as much as, so Greg's over there quilting and knitting and making scarves
Quilts.
and quilts and everything. He's over there just manipulating and pushing people in whatever way he wants, because he's so convincing, and he's got like, oh, look at him with his nice little smile. Look at him. That's a manipulative smile. And if he had real numbers and real data to back up what he had to say, then he would be a quantitative man. But because he doesn't, he just relies on just nonsense and words and good looks.
I can't argue against that. I mean,
So, you know, I
win.
at least from my side here, what I'm seeing, we're obviously very different, and I don't want us to run over on time because we're getting close, actually. But maybe how do we find a common ground? Something that we didn't hear at all with the past election or yesterday's inauguration speech. Sorry, I had to get that in there. But
wrong.
How do we wrong? How do we find a common ground between qualitative and quantitative? You know, and I want to pose that question to you guys.
The new
My
mixed
quantitative
methods
group.
design, right? Going back to the article that I mentioned before about the environment, they really found power in looking at both approaches, because they could get kind of this big picture idea and then like really dig down deep and find out what was actually happening. And having both approaches just strengthen their argument, so they can say to somebody, well, tell me how this is going to affect, you know, this individual person. Okay, I can tell you that. I have the data to tell you that. Well, what about big picture? How is this going to affect, you know, on a bigger scale? It's like, I have that data too, because we did big picture kind of quantitative going across the board, but then we also, you know, found something from that, like this piece is important. You know, bans on, you know, pollution was really important. That's what we found in this broad scale quantitative research. Okay, from that, what digging down really like impacted that? What are the factors? What's actually going on with that? And so they could dig down deeper, and then they could say, yeah, we can tell you specifically what that means from like the different perspective of, you know, being on a small scale.
I know for me, from an experience side, doing last year's cycle 1 research, I utilized quantitative in the beginning, and I realized that it wasn't going to be enough just to have the quantitative information doing the survey, and I think like Greg had said, you know, having the Likert scale, it's like, great, all right, no, I'm sorry, Brett, you want to say, you went right down and just said excellent all the way down. I was afraid of that with my students, because they all took the survey that I had created regarding utilizing technology in the classroom. And I think by looking at the scores, many of them just went right down. So it was the quantitative shaped how I portrayed and utilized the qualitative. And it ended up being the qualitative research and data that actually drove the I would say 90% of the study, and really drove the results section for me, because I was testing out my innovation for later on, and it was the actual focus group meetings that I did with the students that really kind of showed me that the innovation needs some tweaking, but it definitely is on the right track. The quantitative data set it up, but it didn't ultimately give me what I was looking for. So, and I think that's kind of where Michelle, like you were saying with the mixed methods approach, you know, and triangulating if I'm utilizing the terms correctly, triangulating our methods and having the quantitative kind of inform the qualitative and help the qualitative build out the rest of the research, and vice versa, sort of thing.
And I'll jump in with my research from last semester and kind of my approach I've taken, because with quantitative, they believe, you know, there's a reality out there and we just have to kind of go find it. And the qualitative side is, you know, everybody's experiences are different. And that's been something really hard for me to kind of wrap my head around, because I'm always been like, yeah, it's out there, we just have to find it. But then when I meet with students that have such a different experience for me and their backgrounds are so different, that's really kind of made me aware that maybe it is different. Maybe there is not this kind of one true reality, but it's kind of just based on your personal experiences. And so with that in mind, my quantitative data, like all of my numbers, because I have such small numbers, they're not really telling me enough. They're not really giving me enough to really, with statistical significance, say that something happened. So that's why I wanted to pull in that qualitative piece to really say, what is your experience? What things do you need? Because I don't know, and the numbers don't give me enough to say what you need from that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
just want to say. Oh, go ahead, Brett.
No, I got nothing, Greg. Go for it. God.
Well, I just
All
want
right.
to say I don't believe in any of this. I think you're all nuts. I'm gonna sit here with my qualitative quilt. I'm not gonna oppress people like the rest of you with this mixed methods, wolf in sheep's clothing, whatever you call it. Obviously, I'm joking. I think the mixed method approach is great. You get both perspectives of things. I mean, there's a lot of value and validity in it, but I do like the idea of just standing by my quilt. For the record, I like that. I like that better, but I will embrace a quantitative mindset to get broad perspective. And one other thing that I don't think did come up on the quantitative side is that I think with qualitative research, it's so much easier to manipulate your data to have it say what you want it to say. I mean, like, honestly, as I was reading all of the articles from last week and, you know, about how great it is and you can tell the story, all I was thinking is, if you already go in with a preconceived notion and then you're not going to code the article on top of it, you're just going to draw things out of it that really appeal to you. I mean, there's a real inherent risk in going in with bias and hearing what you want to hear. And I think the quantitative data is a great check on that, because that triangulation of data, okay, I heard this in interviews, oh, but the quantitative research doesn't show it at all. So maybe I heard wrong, or maybe I need to investigate it a different way. So there is tremendous value in it.
No, I think you're exactly, and that's what I was getting at earlier by calling you beautiful and saying that's how you win arguments is, I mean, yeah, I mean, because you just, I mean, it's like Trump, you know, he's a beautiful, beautiful man. And all he does is he just speaks qualitative data, which is just like, I heard on the street that like what the people want. And I heard this, and like, I interpreted things this way. And like, I think that, you know, I mean, this is where we get into like some of these, you know, these epistemological and ontological and all these other words that I have yet to really actually understand. But like, I mean, when you really like get into like what we do to create reality and like what we do to like interpret data, like, yeah, you're exactly right, man. Like you can just manipulate what you hear and what you think you heard, and oh, I interpreted what you said through this theoretical lens. So even though it's not what you meant, well, I interpreted it. I took it and I spun it through this perspective that I have on the world, and so therefore it came out to match like what I said it should match, and really like now we've like all settled on this like, oh, now we're good with mixed methods, so like now the debate's over. And like one of the articles I was reading, they were just like, look, like this debate cannot end, like this debate must go on. There is no like, oh well, it's just both things, it's the best of both worlds. It is literally from this debate that both things, both types of research gain their credibility. It's not that one has to tear the other down, but it also doesn't have to be that like we just all sit back and just go, oh, like it's mixed methods, everything's good now, so now we can just like accept that everything should just be mixed methods. Like it is from the debate, it is from like this constant tension in that you start to that allows you to question even like results, you know. So like in order to say like, is this actually true, like we have to question results and methods and methodologies and perspectives, and that's what actually pushes us forward. It's not the actual research or the findings, it's through the questioning of the research and of the findings that we actually find like true knowledge, that we actually are able to like push things forward. It's not It's not like I conduct a research study and the answer is this. It's through the questioning of what I think that we actually get to find the common ground. So it's the common ground may be more so in the debate, in the fight, than in the assumption that we're just like, oh, we figured it out, and it's just everything should just kind of like be a piece of this and a piece of that. Like, yeah, I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it does. It does. I hear you loud and clear. I think that's actually a great way to kind of bring the two to bring our two sides together, and at the same time understand that, you know, the discussion is not over. You know, and kind of like what we were saying with our administration now. but no, it's true. You know, we can't just sit here and say, okay, well, we have mixed methods. Great. Well, let's just move on. But, you know, to keep that debate going, and it keeps it fresh, and it keeps the understanding rolling along, so that to better our research, which is what we're always trying to strive to do, is to, you know, improve education, improve, you know, healthcare, whatever areas we're looking at, or improve methods for fighting addiction. You know, it's just looking at any way possible with utilizing research methods to improve. That's the way that I see it as far as summing up. You know, I just want to see, do you guys have the final thoughts that you wanted to include before we depart?
Just that I think the biggest thing is, what are you trying to find out? What is your research question, and which method is going to help you answer that the best? I mean, I might come say, oh, I'm a quantitative researcher, but if I'm asking a question that's best answered with a qualitative method, then I need to be open to that. I need to be able to understand how to collect both types of data, because my questions might change over time, and the information that I want will change over time. So it's really trying to find, what am I asking, and how am I going to find that answer? What type of methods will help me find that answer?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a cold night. Use a quilt.
I think with that, we gotta be done.
Thank you, guys.
All
Good
right,
debate.
thank you
Greg,
guys.
you're kicked out of the program, Greg. You're out. You're almost on my path, my friend.
All right,
Thanks,
I am
guys.
stopping the broadcast, guys. Later.
Okay.
See you guys.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you.